the role is of GSA. First of all, who's your client? Who's your customer?
Well, the customer that we're housing there would be the Department of Homeland Security. I mean, ultimately,
is the taxpayer
the
ever the
American
customer?
Taxpayer, absolutely.
Right. So given that I think your ultimate customer is actually the taxpayer, can you explain to me why it is that you would ever put together why a prospectus would ever be put together that becomes then so narrowed and so restrictive that you actually impede competition, which doesn't work in the interest of the taxpayer?
Well, with all due respect, you know, I'm not on top of that particular procurement, but I do know that when we were structuring how offers could be received, it was actually done to try and increase competition rather than combining all of the requirements. If you're talking about the DHS consolidated procurement, rather than combining all of those requirements and saying somebody's got to build us 1 million square feet, we broke that down into the component parts of the mission support. So in a complete effort to try and increase competition across the metropolitan area so that different developers who couldn't deliver one single total consolidated space could compete for parts of the requirement.
Let me read this to you because this is your own language. All submissions had to include evidence of, and I quote, all final base building, zoning, subdivision, and site plan approvals on any other required local, regional, state, or federal government approvals that may be required relating to base building utilities, stormwater management, and parking facilities and landscape requirements. How is it that you could ensure competition given those constraints in that time frame?
I get your point. I would say that there were two factors in that. One was we were looking for properties that, if not shovel-ready in the Recovery Act sense of the word, were close to it, so that any developers who wanted to offer needed to be have permits in place or coming out of the ground with buildings. And secondly, I know last year I had to testify before the subcommittee on concerns that we've had, and I know the committee has had, with holdovers and extensions for GSA leases. And we have a number of those mission components of DHS that are in leases that are expiring. And so one of the driving factors there was to avoid high-cost short-term extensions and try and get a project up and developed so that we could move those folks into new facilities before the leases expired.
Mr. Morris, let me just say to you that representing developers in Prince George's and Montgomery County, and particularly in Prince George's County, the fact that GSA continues to use this criteria actually ensures that Prince George's County will never, ever be able to compete for these leases. Never. Because virtually every transportation facility, all of the land that's available, whether you're looking at studies that have been done by the Brookings Institution at land availability in this region, Prince George's County will simply never be able to compete. And I want you to explain to me how it is that in a region where rent should be treated similarly around this beltway, where the prospectus should be clear from one solicitation to the next solicitation without changes being made at the last minute that seem to be targeted to a particular developer or development, you are effectively screening out an entire county, and that means that you're screening out competition. And I can't see how, if the taxpayer is your customer, that you're doing a good deal for your customer with that kind of screening, and it has to change.
I appreciate what you're saying to me.
An appreciation isn't an answer. GSA has to come up with an answer for why it has created the kind of disparity in this region that has left an entire community left out of GSA competition. And this description of this prospectus, given the what's required in the zoning and planning process means that one jurisdiction would never be able to compete for this prospectus. And can you just tell me why a change from a 9-foot to an 8-foot ceiling?
I'm not familiar with the change in the ceiling height.
I want to know why GSA changed a requirement in the prospectus from a 9-foot ceiling to an 8-foot ceiling. Is that to facilitate one building over another building, one area over another area? It's important for GSA to answer these questions. It doesn't actually make sense to me. Is it a safety consideration? Is it to accommodate fire and sprinkler systems? GSA has to answer these questions.
We will get you an answer for that.
Thank you. I want to ask you as well, do you believe that you have any responsibility to address the disparity that I've described in the treatment of these jurisdictions?
Yes, ma'am. I know I'm not going to convince you of this, but there are a number of federal leases in Prince George's County for.
I've actually gotten the leases from GSA. We've looked at them. We've analyzed them. Independent sources have analyzed them. And as I described before, I'm not talking about warehouse space, and we all know that. We know that there are leases in Prince George's County, but we also know that a substantial number of them are warehouse space, not commercial Class A office space, and that's what we're talking about because that's what facilitates economic development. And I will not sit on this subcommittee again to hear GSA's explanation without action. And I think that if we can't get it out in a hearing, then it's going to be done in legislation. Can you just answer for me whether you can provide an analysis that justifies the rent cap differentials in Prince George's County, in Maryland, D.C., and Virginia for new construction? What's the justification for that?
I can't give you that right now, but I can get it for you.
I'll expect that on the record as well. Also, can you confirm that the final Nuclear Regulatory Commission lease for the new building in Montgomery County is within the rent cap?
I can't confirm that right now, but I can get you that
I'd appreciate an answer on the record. And then lastly, at what level are changes to a previously issued solicitation authorized? What's GSA's role in that change, in any change in that solicitation? What's the review process for the solicitation? And are prospective bidders expected to favor specific, or bidding expected to favor specific locations? And what information can you confirm that the changes that are made to those locations?
I'm sorry, you lost me a little bit. I know
so
you were
on the end, if prospective bidders feel that a particular change favors a specific location, what information does GSA then provide to confirm that the changes are made irrespective of location? What is there in the record that a developer can look to say that GSA did this above board and not to favor a specific location?
That's a hard question for me to answer. I think if we have a change in a solicitation, there is an amendment that's issued to the marketplace. Anybody that's bidding that explains what the change is and why we're doing it. In terms of your question that whether or not it's transparent and above board, that it's not favoring anybody, I mean, that's not the point of what the changes are, but I know you're not buying that from me just saying it. So I don't think I'm going to be able to answer your question here like that satisfactorily anyway.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Well, thank you, Ms. Edwards. I'm going to ask you within 30 days, Mr. Morris, to submit to this committee answers to the questions the lady from Prince George's has raised. For example, why the ceilings were lowered from 9 to 8, what the justification or whatever was that figure. Her question on nuclear regulatory cap. We will submit a letter that details her questions. Mr. Morris, we would like, the committee also would like you to break down those those leases that Ms. Edwards says she believes were largely warehouse leases. We need to know about those leases, because it comes close to being an insult to a county that is one of the highest income counties in the United States if the federal government is seeking to make it a repository for
Madam
warehouses.
Chairwoman, if you would yield for a minute, I would like to submit for the record a study that was done actually in September 2007 by the University of Maryland. They've updated some of this, entitled GSA Leasing in the Greater Washington Metropolitan Region, that actually documents the space throughout the region, what kind of space it is, and where it's located.
So ordered, and the staff will do its own analysis. And I'm afraid GSA